Hey everyone, welcome to the Author Entrepreneur Collective, the podcast where I interview authors and entrepreneurs about their books and their businesses. I'm your host, Stacy Matson, author of Bucket List Living, Living Your Purpose, and owner of Bucket List Unlimited. Today's episode is one that requires presence, compassion, and curiosity because we're diving into a topic that is often misunderstood, rarely talked about, and yet incredibly important. Today, I'm joined by psychotherapist and author Adena Bank Lees, who wrote the powerful book Covert Emotional Incest. Adena, welcome to the show. Please share with us a little about you, your book, and your business.
Thank you so much, Stacy, for having me, and welcome everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in. This is a very important topic. I am a licensed clinical social worker, licensed independent addiction counselor, board certified expert in traumatic stress from the American Academy of Experts in Traumatic Stress, and a certified practitioner in psychodrama. And I wrote this book, Covert Emotional Incest, because back in the early 90s, when I was traveling the country and I was training mental health practitioners and allied professionals on all forms of sexual abuse, how to identify in children, adolescents, and adults, as well as treat, people were telling me, you have to write a book about this topic. And this is something that I experienced in my childhood and my adolescence. And I thought I was crazy. Thought there was something wrong with me and I couldn't figure out what it was. And when I was in therapy at 26, a therapist finally said to me, "Have you ever heard of the term covert incest?" And I said, "Of course not." And she started to describe it to me, and it was exactly what I had experienced in my family. So I added it to my presentation, my 6-hour seminar that I did. And I would say, Stacy, about 95% of the audiences, and I had it on an average of 100 people, about 95% of them that did come up to me on the breaks to ask questions or make comments, which were a lot, said, "Oh my goodness, this is happening to me. This has happened to my family. This is my niece. This is my granddaughter. This somebody." They knew somebody. And then it was also, "These are my clients. I had no idea. And we were working so much on this area, and oh my goodness, I missed it." And so it was really, really important that I write this so that clinicians and lay people would have the name for this. And I'll tell you what it is in a second. And that we would have the effective and ethical ways to treat it. So, covert emotional incest is when a child is used as a substitute or surrogate spouse or confidant in a family system for one or both of their adult caregivers. It doesn't matter the gender. It doesn't matter the race. It doesn't matter the culture. It doesn't matter the socioeconomic status. It doesn't matter the sexual orientation. It doesn't matter. It's about being used as a confidant, substitute spouse, surrogate spouse for one or both of your caregivers so that you no longer are a child. You are now responsible for that person's emotional needs. You are hearing content that is inappropriate for a child. For example, you're hearing about coupleship issues, possibly marital issues, sexual issues. You're being exposed to sexual content that is inappropriate for a child. And the sexual energy in the spousal role that gets transmitted to the child is absolutely inappropriate. There is not any direct genital physical touch here. And kids are emotional sponges and energetic sponges, and they pick it up and they have no idea what to do with it. It's overwhelming. And we see all kinds of signs and symptoms that are very similar to a physical or overt, what we call overt sexual abuse victim or survivor. And I want to add two other things, well, four other things actually. So, what marks covert emotional incest is the substitute spouse role. It marks it where the intergenerational boundary is crossed. And the intergenerational boundary is a family therapy term where there is supposed to be appropriate topics spoken to kids about, appropriate behaviors for children from their caregivers. The parents The caregivers are supposed to be a unified executive committee of where they talk about how to raise the children. They talk about the boundaries that keep the kids safe, and they enforce those. Kids have a voice in families. We know now that to be seen and not heard is not okay for children. It's very, very emotionally neglectful and abusive. I do this work every day about people trying to have a voice and they're in their 40s and 50s. So to have children have a voice in a family is very important, but to have children make the important and adult decisions in a family is not okay. It's too overwhelming and it's not appropriate. So children jump up that intergenerational boundary and they're in a peer role with their caregivers. Not okay. Kids are objectified, no longer seen and treated as a human being, but objectification is made to be an object. It doesn't even have to be a sexual object, but an object, a thing that I'm using to meet my needs. And then with covert incest, there are sexual, emotional, romantic needs met. I'm going on a date with my daughter. I'm going on a date with my son. It all sounds really cute. I'm going on a mommy son date or daddy daughter date. And it can be perceived very differently. And so I don't want to go to extremes, and I don't want people to hear this and say, oh my God, she's making everything about abuse. It's about the context, it's about patterns. So we need to be paying attention.
Important for people to know about that for sure. Why do you think this dynamic is so often overlooked or misunderstood?
We glorify this. For example, um, a young boy's father dies. He's 8 years old, and at the funeral, we say, you're the man of the house now. Take care of your mom and your sisters. No, he's a boy. He needs to stay a boy. He's not a little man. He is a boy, and he has a right to be a boy until he's not. Oh, how incredible he took care of his mom for so long, or she took care of, my daughter's my best friend. Mom and daughters are best friends, and we look alike and we dress alike. And no, there has to be that intergenerational boundary there. There has to be a separation. Kids do not feel safe if there is not a demarcation. Who's in charge? This is what they need to know to feel safe and to have their brains develop appropriately. Who's in charge? Do you love me? Are you consistent? So in our culture, and this is across the first edition of my book, Stacy, got published in February of 2018. And I have heard from people all around the world who have bought this book, oh my goodness, you're talking about me. So I had no idea. Was I just talking about people in the United States? Was I just talking about people in my culture, which is metropolitan Jewish New York? Was I talking about something bigger? I'm talking about something global. And uh, and there are cultures where people are much closer, families are much closer, children are supposed to and take care of the parents. Okay. And so we know now that people are living longer. And so, yes, as adults, roles do shift and change and switch. I took care of my parents. I was more in a parent role when they were elderly and ill. That's the normal part of life. And that's difficult enough to have those role switches and say, holy mackerel, I'm taking care of the person who always took care of me. That's really difficult. We need a lot of support with that. And this is happening as a kid and an adolescent and a young adult. So why do we miss this? Because we don't see it as inappropriate. We see it as close. We applaud it. We elevate it. And this is one of the reasons why I wrote the book and why I want to talk about it is we have to see how it affects children's nervous systems, how they grow up with overwhelming burdens of taking care of other people, people pleasing. I just worked with somebody yesterday their nervous system is so activated, she cannot calm down. She gets overwhelmed so quickly because she was responsible for her mother and her 7 siblings. It's devastating for people.
Yeah.
intimacy problems, relationship problems. Yeah.
Yeah, I think a lot of people go through that. What are some early signs in childhood that this dynamic might be present?
So you very much want to look for the precocious, you're so mature for your age child. You want to look for the people-pleasing child. You want to look for the perfectionistic child. The acting out child is the one who's usually telling the truth of the family. Something's wrong here. And they're doing it through their behavior because they can't tell us what's happening. They don't have the words for it. They do it through their behavior. So usually the covert emotional incest is the hero of the family. Um, the high achiever, the overachiever, the perfect one, the one with anorexia, the one with eating disorders. Very often, people, I'm trying to think, always responsible. Look out for those children. And those are the ones we say, oh, thank goodness we don't have to worry about them. They're taken care of, they're doing fine. They are usually filled with high anxiety. They're very hard on themselves, and there is a core of shame of never being good enough and always having to perform in order to have worth and to be lovable. Those are the ones we have to pay attention to.
Important to know. How does covert emotional incest affect a child's development emotionally and psychologically?
So if I don't get to be a kid, I don't really get to play. I know I have to perform, I have to do. So my worth gets tied into how do I look to you? And I am going to be hypervigilant about, which means hypervigilant means I am going to zone in on your facial expressions about am I being approved of? Do you like this? Do you not? And I am going to be an expert chameleon to be able to be liked by you, to be able to be approved by you. And I am not going to have much of a sense of myself. What do I want? What do I like? What's okay for me? I abandoned myself always because I never was able and never got valued or mirrored for who I was. It was always about how do I take care of somebody else? And so my orientation is other esteem, as Pia Melody used to say in the 80s, rather than self-esteem. So these are the people who oftentimes become CEOs. They become nurses, they become social workers, they become therapists. Uh, not surprised. And they're the ones that you really want to work for you because they are going to work their butts off and overwork and overachieve and not ask for a raise. So, and I know that well because that's what I did. So, and then I burnt out. And again, the lady I worked with yesterday said I had to melt down before anybody realized something was wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What are some patterns people might recognize in themselves that could point back to this experience?
So again, pay attention to, did I feel like I raised my parents or my caregivers? Am I still responsible? If I'm an adult, am I still responsible for my mom or my caregiver's needs, emotional needs, physical needs? What's happening in my current relationship if I'm in one? Does it feel like my parents or my caregivers get in the middle of me and my spouse? Whether I'm married or not doesn't matter. Um, does it feel like uh, for my spouse, like, their parent is in the middle of us and I, I'm having to get their attention and their strife and struggles because their family or their caregivers want more attention and are jealous of me as their partner. Those are all signs. Physical intimacy signs, having difficulty being vulnerable because I'm always the one who's been the caretaker. I'm always the one who's 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 been the strong one. I'm meeting your needs that I don't even know what I like, whether it's physical intimacy, whether it's just going out for something, a book that I like. Somebody asked me, what do you want to do? What restaurant you want to go to? I say, oh, it doesn't matter, whatever you want. Pay attention.
Why is it so difficult for people to connect the dots between their childhood and their current struggles?
A lot of people have said to me, well, I just thought that was childhood. Like you grow up and then it doesn't mean anything. So the education about how our childhood environment and genetics mix together to develop our nervous system, which means how we see the world, how we relate to other people, how we relate to ourselves and treat ourselves. It goes with you through the years. And so you actually have young parts of you in you and you feel them. You don't know it's you. You don't know it's them, but you feel them. They show up in physical signs and symptoms. They show up in a clenched gut. They show up in a heart racing. They show up in a tight chest. They show up in a flush of shame and hot and wanting to run away. They show up when I'm with people and their leg is going really fast and they're talking and their left leg is going or their feet are going. That's how those young parts show up. That's a flight response. That's somebody who wants to run. That is a very early sign that, oh my goodness, there's danger here. Even if in 2026, we're sitting in my office, we're sitting in a group room, because I mostly do group now, and there are no overt threats. However, the way the nervous system is set up, Stacy, is that there's a part of our brain that's called the amygdala. And the amygdala is our warning system. And it's in the part of our brain that doesn't have any words. So it's not in the thinking part of our brain. It's in the limbic system, which is in the midbrain in the deep inside. And it's our warning bell of danger. And so if I have a history of feeling anxious and things not being comfortable or things feeling emotionally dangerous or physically dangerous, my amygdala registers that for the rest of my life. And if anything comes through the amygdala and reminds the amygdala, whether it's words, whether it's emotions, it could be a smell, it could be I'm looking at something and somebody looks like somebody in a movie, I'm meeting them. My amygdala is going to sign off that warning bell and it's going to send messages to the rest of my brain to say, there's danger here. And depending on my personality and the kind of fight or flight response that I have. So I could be a fighter and I could get really activated and shaky. I could want to run. That's my flight. I could freeze, deer in the headlights. I could collapse and submit, where I just people please. These are all that's called fawning. There are many, many different ways, and my nervous system automatically does that. It's not a thought process. That's how the younger parts of us show up. And a lot of the work that we're doing now with people in therapy is to identify that, to identify what parts of us are getting activated or triggered, if we could use that word. And then as an adult, how do I care for those parts and remind them that they are safe in the moment, if that's true, if they are safe in the moment? How are they safe in the moment? That was dangerous then, absolutely. What is this reminding us of? Okay. And now we're safe right now. Let's look around the room. Let's make sure that we know it's 2026 and it's May 21st.
How does covert emotional incest affect intimacy and romantic relationships later in life?
So there are many people that I've worked with who have stayed away from romantic relationships and intimacy. They have been way too scared to get involved with anyone because their experience has been what we term engulfment, or I feel swallowed up, or I feel smothered, because that was their experience in being that confidant or that substitute spouse and being responsible for an adult's emotional needs and romantic needs. It was too much for the child. So anything that comes close to intimacy or vulnerability, the nervous system goes, danger, danger. And people are, no, I'm not doing that. Well, no, no way. So people can very much stay away. And the extreme of that is called sexual anorexia, where I just shut down. And I don't want to get into there are so many pieces now with people who will say I'm asexual and how they are identifying in their sexual orientation. I don't want to get into that. I would just say if somebody gets so anxious around intimacy, even emotional closeness, that's a sign something happened. We need to pay attention to that. And that's one of the pieces of covert emotional incest. Um, Another is what we do, come here, no, go away. I want the intimacy. I want you to come close. But if you get close, I get really scared. So go away. So that pattern, if you find that in yourself, that pattern, you can also find yourself being attracted to people like that. And people who are so needy that your job is to take care of them. And that's who you are attracted to. That's who you end up in relationship with. And you say, what about me? You end up saying, what about me? At first, it feels really comfortable because that's the role you're used to. That's how you know how to do intimacy. And then after a while, you're saying, I'm not getting any of my needs met. What about that? And then I start getting resentful. So that's another piece. The sexual intimacy can be very, very messed up. Again, I can have a combination of things. I can very much be, don't touch me. I will service you. I will please you. And service you is a very common term that people will use because that's, again, performative. It's not a sharing. It's a, I'm here for your needs. Uh, so I don't know how to share in that. I don't know how to say to you, I'm vulnerable too. This is what I need because I don't even know what I need. That's how it can impact for CEI survivors.
What impact does it have on a person's ability to set boundaries?
It really, really diminishes people's ability to set boundaries. And it makes total sense if you think about it because there were no boundaries to begin with. And so, boundaries, I could just say for me, the word boundaries was never used in my home. Um, and when I started to set boundaries when I was in my late 20s, my parents said things like, you don't love us anymore. You're hostile. We're losing you. What's happening? What's going on? Why are you doing this? And so I had to really educate them about this is called health. I need to have a separate self from you. And how I have a separate self is just as simple as I would like you to call before you come over. That was so huge. No, it's not okay to just come by. Once in a while to surprise me, of course, but it's not like just regular, you just come over whenever you feel like it. No, please call to see if I'm available. That was huge. Uh, so boundaries is such a critical thing in my book. It's such a critical thing that we work on in the healing of CEI. What are my boundaries? Oftentimes, Pia Mellody, who's somebody who was big in the 1980s, she wrote a book called Facing Codependence. She talked a lot about boundaries, and she talked about that we can either have none, we can have walls where we put up brick walls. So people go to extremes when there's trauma, Stacy. So that's why I talk about the walls versus the nothing. And then I can have sometimes they're there and sometimes they're not. And boundaries are something that are permeable. They are flexible. It's kind of like a force field, like a clear force field where you can see me, but I can move it out physically and emotionally. If I need more space, I can move it out and push you away, but you're still standing there, but I don't feel that. Or I can move it close enough to my skin where I'm allowing you to touch me physically and emotionally, where I can really open my ears and open my heart. But I get to decide that. When I am a victim of CEI and or a survivor, and I don't have a lot of practice yet, things are going to hit me emotionally and I'm going to get blindsided or I'm going to take on other people's feelings. Because again, I didn't learn about this thing about, well, you have your feelings, I have mine. So boundaries are a critical piece. We spend a lot of time on that.
Do people often feel guilt or responsibility toward the parent involved or parents, and how does that play out?
Yes, very much guilt. God forbid you should say no or shouldn't be there to meet every need. So it plays out, for example, uh, I'm thinking about one of the vignettes in the book. So we have Marlene, who was at her son's 10th birthday party in their home, and her mom was in the home. And her mom was saying, "Oh, it's really hot in here." Now, she didn't say, "Could somebody please put up the air conditioner or open the window?" "Oh, it's really hot in here." And Marlene, her ears were so tuned in to anything mom would say that she heard her, even though she wasn't in the other room. And she was focused on that, and she missed her son's birthday party because she was attending to her mom the whole time. And if not, then the guilt would be just overwhelming and so debilitating. And another example is you're spending time with your spouse. This is another Marlene example in the book. And she's starting to have an intimate moment, emotionally intimate moment with her husband, and her mother calls. "Oh, I feel so lonely. You always were here for me. I need you. Come over." And she's in a place of, what am I supposed to do? And literally like torn. What am I supposed to be doing here? And couldn't. It's like somebody who's addicted. We talk about the addiction to the guilt there. That makes me do the behavior, even if I don't want to. I want to stay with my husband, but the guilt pushes me to go people please, to go meet those needs. And then I don't get what I want. I don't do what I need. And so, yes, guilt and performing uh, and achieving are three really big runners of people who have CEI. Yeah.
For someone who is hearing this and thinking this might be me, what would you want them to know?
So I want you to know you're not crazy. I want you to know you're totally sane. I want you to know that you're not alone, that this is something that is absolutely happening way more than we could even know about. There is very little research on CEI at this point. Because it's so covert. And how do we measure it? How do we get a study done? And the fact that we still don't validate it enough. So I want you to know, I'm going to say it again. You're sane. You're not alone. There is a way out, and there's a way to healing. Pick up my book. Go to Dr. Kenneth Adams on the internet. He runs workshops about this. He's got writings about articles and books about this. Pia Melody's book, Facing Codependence, is another really is a good book. The Emotional Incest Syndrome by Dr. Pat Love is a seminal book on this topic. I have a workbook as well. Um, on Amazon. My book is in launch right now, so we're going to put a link to the launch site on Amazon on here so that you can get the book for $9.99 right now until June 2nd. And then the prices will go up when the book goes live. Uh, get help. Look this up. There are videos. I have a YouTube channel. There are ways for you to get information.
Yeah, I'll put that in the bio for sure, your link to your book, because I think that's important. How do you help clients move from confusion to awareness without overwhelming them?
We take it slow and we take it at your pace. And there is no performing, and that's really what's important. There's no, please the therapist, you should do this, you should do that. We check in with your nervous system all the time. Can you do this? Is this manageable? Read a little bit. I would say when I tell people about when people start my book, it's take it slow, read a page, stop, breathe, look around the room. I mean, this is intense material. You do not want to get overwhelmed by this material. It's okay to take a break. It's okay to take a week break. It's okay to take 2 weeks of a break and come back to it. We do it at your pace. That's how we go from confusion to awareness or clarity about things. We do it the whole way through. It's follow your nervous system. And you learn how to do that. And that's some of the first work we do is to be even aware of what those bodily sensations are because they've been happening and a lot of people aren't even aware of what they are. So we start with that and we start with safety. And we do a lot with safety and what we call resourcing, which is about your strengths. We do no vulnerability without identifying strengths first. Because if we don't anchor in our strengths, we go into vulnerability and we can go down the rabbit hole very fast. And the healing is not about re-traumatizing. It is about empowerment.
Yeah. Is it possible to heal while still having a relationship with the parent involved?
It depends. So you're hearing a lot now about estrangement from parents and people cutting parents off. I do not advocate for that. It is, and it's not a blanket statement. There are people who their families have been toxic enough for them to say, I cannot have contact with you now. So I like the boundaries first. Let's start setting some of those. Let's see how that goes. Let's see if people can respect, if those people you're setting boundaries with can respect those boundaries. Now, it is your job to enforce them always. If I set a boundary expecting someone to go along with that, I am probably in unrealistic expectations. So I need to know if I set a boundary, it's my job to enforce it, and I'm going to watch the other person's behavior. And if they, as a pattern, consistently do not respect my boundaries, what am I learning about them? Is this a safe enough person for me to be in relationship with? Do I need to have them at this distance, or nothing? So I am always looking at where is that rather than being in black and white, because as I said earlier, the black and white is the trauma response. I don't want to go to black and white unless I absolutely have to for my safety and my sanity. So we are very, very cautious about that kind of stuff. And I will also say, if I am in an abusive relationship, whether it is covert emotional incest, and it's people use the word enmeshment, which means the pattern of staying in that over time. I cannot heal if I am going to continue to be in an enmeshed relationship where there are no boundaries. No, I will not be able to heal from this. I have to start setting boundaries and deal with the anxiety of setting the boundary, of displeasing, disappointing, or even having the anger of the person I'm setting the boundary with. Can I tolerate that? That's a lot of work right there. Can I tolerate being the bad guy? If I cannot, then it's not time for me to set the boundary. And I don't do it alone. I have a lot of support. I cannot set boundaries by myself. I set it and then I get my support because it's very, very scary. So again, we go at your pace, we go at people's pace, and then we watch the behavior and we see if the person is safe enough for you to be in relationship with. And you get to have your eyes open and make decisions based on the actions of the person, not what they're saying. Oh, yes, I love you. I love you. And then I'm keep crossing the boundary. I might love you, but I'm not a safe enough person for you to be with. So all of that has to be taken into consideration, Stacy.
Yeah, that's good to know. What does a healthy sense of self look like on the other side of the work?
That I can sit up straight in my chair, that I can stand up straight, that I can look you straight in the eye, that I can tell you who I am. I can make mistakes and I can feel inside that I'm not a mistake. I make mistakes and I don't go into total shame about how terrible and horrible I am. That I can identify this is what I like, this is what I want, this is what I need. I can state it directly. That I have the confidence to be able to be vulnerable with you when I have assessed that you are safe enough to be vulnerable with. So I now have the choice. I'm not an automatic where I'm either just performing, I'm just sharing everything because I want you to like me, or I'm not sharing anything. Again, that trauma response of the all or nothing. I'm in a place, excuse me, of choice, of agency, where I know I can do things, uh, and I can tolerate the no, and I can actually celebrate a no from someone rather than being destroyed by it. So I am more in my authenticity and less in my performance.
Okay. What do you most hope readers take away from your book?
So the book right now, I really want, I want professionals, mental health professionals, substance abuse and addiction professionals, marriage and family therapists to read this book because what I've added in the revised, updated edition is about 100 pages of composite case vignettes where not just descriptions, but also about the kind of therapy that I do, which is experiential therapy. Again, I'm a psychodramatist, so I use experiential methods combined with what we know about the nervous system now. So it's grounded in neurobiology of trauma. And I also use something called the internal family systems model, which is about parts of ourselves. We talked a little bit about that earlier, the young parts of ourselves. So I want clinicians and allied professionals to read this book so that they get a good picture of what this looks like across the lifespan, so that they can assess appropriately. They know what they're looking for. They can ask the right questions so that they can give the appropriate ethical and effective treatment for CEI. And I also want people in the lay public to be able to read this. The first 160 some odd pages are about my story. It's an educational memoir telling my story and educating about what is boundaries. What is the internal family systems model? What is something called dissociation? Because we all do it. How do we do that? What does that look like? And what does reenactment look like? Reenactment is when I try to get it right, but I do the same thing over and over and expect different results. And what we know about that is we just get the same results. So we have to do something different. So I want people to walk away with, now I know what it is. Now I know I'm sane. Now I know there's a way out and there's healing. Um, and that I can live a life that I want. I can fully be a thriver and not just a survivor. And a thriver is just what I explained before. And I am getting the juice out of life and I have joy and I can have the whole range of my feelings and being who I am, not having to please you. And for the clinicians that I can assist people to go from where they were to where they absolutely have a right to be.
I love that. Do you have anything else to share with the audience before we close out today?
I just want to say thank you so much for being with us, for listening to this. Please, if this resonates with you at all, spread the word, have people watch this, share it on your social media. You can feel free. We're gonna link my website. We're gonna link email on there. You have any questions, you have anything you need, you just write to me. Try to get back to people within 24 hours. Sometimes I'm traveling and I'll have an automatic, I'm not available right now, but I will get back to you.
Adina, thank you so much for being here and letting everybody know about this very important topic. I appreciate you.
Thank you so much, Stacy, and I appreciate you.
Thank you. As always, if this episode impacted you, please share it with someone who may need to hear it. And don't forget to subscribe and leave a review. This is the Author Entrepreneur Collective, where your story matters, your voice matters, and healing through storytelling is always possible. Until the next episode.